one we just saw more ethical or useful than turning on the TV and watching the news? I'm not so sure that I comprehend the greater difference. I mean, there's this aspect of the film we just saw where he's saying that he's reporting these facts in order to entertain. And in a sense, this is what we're doing. I mean, especially in my generation, I feel like in some way there's a certain enjoyment of watching violence. So I wonder what the real...
Well, I think the difference really is between the documentary and the fiction. And we also, another aspect we worked today about was Swiss writer Max Frisch's explanation why we need the tragic and why we need the elegy, and why at the end of the story, when we all wish the hero would survive, he has to be utterly destroyed in tragedy, just to give him nobility. And also, we can then, and he literally put it to me that way, you see, this way we can enjoy his tragic death. Whereas if he was a human being dying, we couldn't enjoy that, and we may not overcome it in 20 years. And this is, I mean, ever since probably tragedy or so has been invented, when we do, this is again more your field, the representation of violence and the representation of death may help us to prepare ourselves to the day when we have to die. To somehow, you know, get used to the notion of death and that we are mortal through theater, literature, or whatnot. But real life cannot prepare us for death. It can't help. It just destroys us.
It's also one of our features in the evening that if there are other professors here, we ask them to be so courageous to talk to the colleagues. They would usually just say, oh, I admire your work. So maybe they have, but it's very late today and they both work very hard. We all work very hard today. But my question is, if Chantal or Catherine wants to say something, share with the students, I would be very appreciative of that. Yes,
I'm very willing to leave the room.
No,
because I thought, you know, it was for me, well, I hope, you know, by chance was never in a real war, but for me it was not so operatic in my eyes. Like, it was looking kind of realistic.
Well, maybe the time distance helping, yes.
Maybe, I don't know, because let's say compared to Coppola, Apocalypse,
yeah.
no? I think that was operatic, really, well, of course he used opera as a music soundtrack too. But I was thinking, oh God, well, how much work?
Thank you.
No, but it's true, and then you have to like, almost do like a real war to make it believable to us, except that you were, of course, not exchanging those fire. So I suppose.
Well, Chantal, you wouldn't believe that, and wouldn't also believe it was all live ammunition. There was no blanks because these were all real fighters. During the daytime, they worked with us as extras, and at nighttime, they were fighting, so they could not.
That's why it looks so.
They couldn't. They were real, and they in their M16s and K47s and the RPG, they could not use blank ammunition because it would ruin their guns.
So
but
you
they were yes, but they were so
good.
good at it that we didn't have a single accident. But of course, the fight
That's
is going
obscene.
on in the city, and the only thing is when they shoot their RPG, you know, these kind of rocket-propelled things from which they use again now in Iraq. And I say, well, where does it go? And he'd say, show us. Well, we were always aiming out at the sea, of course. No, I mean, we didn't have an incident, fortunately, but half of my crew later on died in the war, and like for him, a young Lebanese, you know, now they're asking me this film in Lebanon because it's the only 35mm footage they have about what the city looked like then. Because as soon as the war was over, they sent in the bulldozer and they razed the whole city instead of to rebuild and preserve, you know, like they did in Warsaw, where less was left. So in a sense, you're right, what seemed sometimes like an opera to me when I was setting the buildings afire, and so why don't we set this one? And yeah, there's some more flames in the far left back corner, wouldn't that look nice, you know, this kind of thing. But now with the time past, what remains is the document. I see that too.
I think you must be the only film director in history who really had live ammunition in the scene.
I don't know.
And I never heard this. I will tell the Spiegel. Okay.
Crazy people like Werner Herzog would have done worse. No, we've been very careful with it. But we've also been there's a making off of the picture, which my class saw, where we went to talk to all the different factions because we had to have their agreement, because we sometimes were in between their lines and sometimes we had to cross the lines between demarcation line, go and shoot in other places, like when they go up to the Maronite monastery for the child adaptation. And that is actually we had to go into that territory, but usually we were on the Palestinian-Syrian side. And that is the scene that really caused an uproar, and we couldn't go back to Lebanon for many years because they said we never ever sold orphans to adoption.
That is a big problem. Okay.
Yes,
Which is not quite true because this child was sold.
If I can speak in English, I don't know if I can find the vocabulary, but for me the movie looked like... I don't agree very much at the beginning with the family, that I cannot understand why it's there, because if it's begun in Beirut, it's the same for me, because it's a very beautiful movie which is variation about, not about obscenity of war, because of war, because I think war is there like the magnificent decor of the solitaire hero, the man who is walking and trying to find his solitaire destiny in a world in destruction. He don't care of the destruction, in fact. It's a figure of romantic and mal of the solitaire hero, yes. I think. So it's not about obscenity of war, because he don't care.
That's how I saw it.
No.
Well,
but yeah, I like that.
Well, what I have, if for a moment we could step back from the horrible reality around us and look at this as if it was a metaphor, I say this is a man, you know, where war is raging within him. That's the only reason why I had the family scene. So when he gets into a real war zone, all of a sudden he feels good because the war outside gives him the feeling what's happening within him is quite pacific. When there's war around him, he's at peace with himself.
Yes,
and actually that's why I make movies, because when all hell breaks loose on the set, I feel just great.